Hello, everybody. We're live. Welcome to this thing now. It's 2024. We're going to try new things. This is Hans Nelson. For those that follow the channel closely, you know that Hans is part of our community, and he's also one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And he has his own channel as well on YouTube and on X. He talks about a lot of this. It's got a lot of similar stuff that we talk about on this channel, but he's doing his own thing. And I figured starting in 2024 that we tried doing a weekly conversation together. It seems like Friday 2 p.m. might be a good time. We'll see how that shakes out for the upcoming weeks. But we're gonna discuss different topics. We'll use this platform as a way to sort of brain dump at the end of the week, so that we, at least for me, I don't go into the weekend with anxiety thinking about, I didn't talk about this thing. I need to get this out of my brain. And Hans, I thought was probably the best person to do that with, because I trust him very much, and he's a fantastic, very smart dude. So yeah, hi Hans, how are you?
How's it going? I don't think you should lie to people on your stream. I'm definitely not the smartest person that you've ever met, not even close.
Oh, come on.
But I do enjoy having lots of deep dive conversations, and I am excited about this. And yeah, it'll be fun to kind of explore a little bit more general format and not necessarily be stuck on the Tesla and Elon related space. I know that will definitely be a big part of what we talk about. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in the world that's really important. And yeah, so a lot to talk about.
So today's topic, we'll start with X. So it was funny. We don't always want to be talking about Elon and Tesla. Let's talk about X instead.
Yep.
But I think it'll be a sort of a good place for us to start this, because there are shifts that are going on in public discourse, and it's fascinating how that one individual seems to be driving that again, with sort of a disruption, let's say, of an industry that I think has needed disrupting for a long time. And one of the topics that I've been thinking about quite a bit is sort of the recent changes that have been happening to the platform as far as who's coming on board. So now, when the platform was purchased, X in this case, back in 2022, he put in the bid, and he purchased it in October. There was a lot of skepticism about the success of the platform and how it would transform over time. How it was a distraction to Elon Musk's current ventures with SpaceX and Tesla. And now, as we're getting into it more as of late, I'm sensing a shift in how the platform is being perceived, and I'm seeing a lot of new voices pop up that perhaps were on the sideline before, that are becoming a lot more enthusiastic about what's going on. And I think one of the recent things that has happened on that platform is the addition of, agree or disagree with these folks, the addition of people like Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon, who's somebody on the opposite side of the political spectrum that's going to be doing a show on there as well. You got Tulsi Gabbard doing a show. You have a lot of people that have said for the longest time they would leave the platform, but they're as engaged as they've ever been, mainly because it's a place for people to fight ideas. So I'll tee it off there, and maybe I'll hand it over to you, Hans, and kind of maybe brain dump what that sort of thing brings up in your mind, and then we can turn into a discussion.
Yeah, I think that obviously if Elon wants this to be a public town square, or specifically, really a global public town square, but since the United States is one of the countries with the most free regulations and laws on the books as far as free speech, then the culture of free speech is going to be kind of centered here in the United States, and I think that that means that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are going to end up being a little bit U.S. centric from the political side of things, just for that fact alone. One of the things that, as he purchased it, we saw a lot of people from the left say they were leaving or actually leave. And that was really not a positive sign for having a good, healthy, actual town square where debates could happen, discussion could happen, people could really talk about things and have a nice, wide open Overton window that was well balanced. And a lot of people noted that at the time, and they were definitely right to note that we were moving much more in the direction of going towards the right. And, a lot more people on the right side were earlier in embracing doing things like starting shows. And, like Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon both left their networks at roughly the same time. And it's taken Don Lemon much longer to come to X than it took Tucker. He embraced it right away. And, some of that is definitely going to be colored by the fact that Elon was putting forth a lot more rhetoric that was a little bit more popular on the right side of the spectrum than the left side of the spectrum at the time. But I think that the Don Lemon move actually is a really positive sign that, maybe we were way over here on the left side of the spectrum and we were moving towards the right. And maybe we even overcorrected to the right a little bit now. But now that we've got people like Don Lemon and Tulsi Gabbard, who, she was a Democrat who now is an independent, but their joining of the platform and really utilizing it, I think maybe swings us back towards the center a little bit, which I think is a really positive overall sign. I think that we really need this to be something that is well balanced from the left side and the right side to be a productive conversation. Because I think both sides really have a lot of valuable perspectives, and not just left and right, but also, there are other dimensions that we should talk about besides just conservative versus progressive. And, there's the authoritarian versus libertarian axis, which I think is even more important, honestly, than the conservative versus progressive. But, on both of these axes, we need actual balance, and we need people with strong points of view kind of at every point in the spectrum, but, including the far ends of the spectrum, to have a voice and be able to say what they need to say. But we don't need the overall conversation to be controlled by those people that are really far on the fringes in any direction. And, that would include libertarian versus authoritarian as well. But obviously, when you're looking at authoritarian versus libertarian just on a principles basis, the libertarians are never going to be the ones to silence other people's speech as much as the authoritarians will. And that's, one of the struggles that we really have found ourselves in, I think, over the past decade, is that as these platforms have become very, very powerful, they have drawn a lot of attention from people who didn't like the fact that their power was being challenged. And they really did try to exert a lot of control over all of the social media platforms and just the open internet kind of in general. And so we are moving, and I think that's the overall positive trend, that, while we kind of ping pong back and forth on the progressive conservative spectrum here on X specifically, then we are definitely moving, though, from authoritarian to libertarian. And that is an incredibly positive thing that I think should be embraced by both people on the right and on the left who want to continue to live in a pluralistic society where each individual has the ability to be respected, for their voice to be valued, and for their freedoms to actually be something that is important. So yeah, I think that's really where I'm at kind of overall in just watching where we are socially, and then watching the evolution of X as a platform.
Yeah, I agree with all the points you just brought up. What's very interesting to me, if I go back to the Don Lemon thing, is I was slightly surprised that it actually happened, because that was my hope at the very beginning. Was when they both left the networks, I was like, just throw those two a bunch of money, bring them here, and showcase why having having both sides debate each other is such a thirst that the public has, that I don't think we've really satiated in any meaningful way. I think what's really interesting about him coming on board is I do believe, Don Lemon in this case, I do hope, let's just say, I hope that this actually will push other people on the, let's say, on the left side of the political spectrum to take the platform a lot more seriously when it comes to open debate, because of some of the perceived quote unquote wrongdoings that were done when the platform was initially purchased, where maybe folks felt like, oh my God, this is like, it's too far right. It's clear that, we're going the wrong direction, whatever you may think. But in reality, if you go on the platform, at least from my experience, as of late, especially in the last 2 months, I've never seen better conversations and more open discussion of ideas than I've ever seen on that platform. And this has been back since 2008. I've been on Twitter X for the better part of how many years is that? 16 years or whatever it's been. And I just find it very interesting that now we're this Overton window that we talked about. For those that are not familiar, the Overton window, a simple way of thinking about it, is basically what is allowed to be talked about in any given society, even though it's not illegal to talk about it. The acceptance of what's being talked about can change. So if you have a very small Overton window, that basically means there's like very rigid rules, quote unquote, on what you can talk about or can't talk about. And now, since this purchase of X, this Overton window has been just blown wide open, and you're seeing all kinds of discussions happening. I think that in itself, the thirst for varied, quote unquote, controversial discussions, whatever you want to call it, there's a giant thirst for that from the public. And it almost makes a brilliant business case for platforms to really take that on and take it seriously, because the amount of attention that I see that getting on the platform blows anything else out of the water. And I'll use my recent example of uploading the Elon Musk space with Andrew Tate and Alex Jones and Vivek, and this freaking surreal space that happened, which a lot of people in the replies thought it was AI. And I'm telling you, it's not AI. It was 100% real, and I can't believe it is, but it is. When I uploaded that supercut on here on this channel, I fully expected two things to happen. One, I expected for YouTube to give me a strike for posting what they deem to be like stuff you can't say, disinformation, misinformation, controversial opinions, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I just Alex Jones and Andrew Tate in the same spaces, like that should break something, right? So that didn't happen. And the opposite happened. This thing went viral on my channel, which I fully didn't expect. And the second thing I expected to happen was that I was going to get demonetized. That they would say, goes against our rules in some way. Advertisers are very pissed off. We're going to demonetize this video, or we might demonetize you as well because, you've gotten a strike for this thing. So the opposite of those two things happened. This thing flew, and it was not demonetized. If anything, it was one of my better performing videos when it came from that perspective. And so that opened my eyes to a lot of things. As somebody who's sort of, you and I are both quote unquote in the media space, and we see the trends. We post a video, we see how it performs. We tweak a title and a thumbnail, we see how that changes things. We see what advertisers like to pay more for and what advertisers like to pay less for. Like all that stuff's in the data. And the fact that something like that performed that well on YouTube, which YouTube is a phenomenal platform, but in the past has not had nearly as open and free, let's say, rule sets when it comes to these types of conversations. The fact that they embraced it fully and this thing took off is telling me that the Overton window has been shattered. Like it's way bigger now, and the acceptance of what's acceptable is much more broad. And I don't see how I find it hard to believe that this wasn't due to X being run in a different way. Like I don't know what else would have caused that. It could be that maybe we're in an election year, and advertisers are sort of smart, and they're like, okay, and platforms are smart, and they're like, okay, let's let this run because it's obviously going to perform well. But I don't think that's the case. I think this is a direct response to what is happening on X. The fact that the formula of just letting humans human, doesn't matter how controversial it is, just abide to free speech, uphold those values, and let the chips fall where they may, and make it profitable. Make it so that you don't punish people for speaking within the legal framework of a country, and just reward them with a monetary incentive to say things that a lot of people will find resonate with them or whatever. Like actually incentivize discords in a sense. Making that profitable is giant. It is a giant lever that hasn't been pulled before. We've done the opposite, and I think we've had this artificial suppression of this insane business case where freedom of speech is actually very profitable. And I think that's how this is changing the game. I just word vomited, so I'll shut up and let you go from that.
Yeah, that really got me thinking on a couple of different layers. So I think that, it's easy to assume that the platforms themselves are the ones that want to censor, that it's YouTube, that it's Facebook, that it's Google, um, or I guess I should say Meta, that these are the things that would like to actively censor speech. And I think to a certain extent, there is some truth to that. Hold on just a second.
No problem.
I think there is some truth to that, but I think it's probably overestimated. And this is complete and utter speculation on my part. But I think that the pressure on those platforms to do a lot of that censoring really was coming from government agencies and various powerful cohorts that we've seen exposed in the Twitter files. And the thing is, once that whole thing gets brought into the light and they lose their ability to actually close the Overton window, like, I would love to have some insight into whether or not they are still actively doing the exact same things with Meta and with, all the other social media platforms and Google. I guess it could be, both open internet and social platforms. Are they still doing those exact same things that they were doing with Twitter when it was Twitter? Or since they are no longer able to control the totality of speech, is there any point? Like, is it basically a binary thing that's either on or it's off? I mean, I'm sure it's not completely binary, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if it's mostly binary, and that that pressure has probably evaporated to like 80% or something. And so that would actually make it much easier because, I don't think that YouTube actually really wants to censor, because
I agree.
if they can make more money from ad revenue by having, I think one of the things that I'm going to watch is YouTube and Twitter as X rolls out monetization. I expect to see a number of prominent firearms channels come onto the X platform, because those used to be some of the very biggest channels on YouTube. And then YouTube got all kinds of pressure and flack. They completely changed their monetization rules, and all of those people basically got demonetized. They had to completely change their business model and do a whole bunch of stuff. And there's a whole category of creators who are kind of in that vein, that had similar things happen at a similar time. And once we see those creators come to X and start making a bunch of money, then the question is, okay, how do the other platforms respond? Do they open back up, or do they just stick with their overall censorship regime again? And so the reason that I bring that up is because I think that that is an easy case study that we can watch,
low-hanging fruit,
to kind of get insight into how things are working on the deeper levels that it's harder to see.
I think that's a great point. The firearm channel example is perfect, because I can see how a lot of people would agree with the sort of notion that says, well, if I'm from the sort of political side of the ball game that says, hey, like guns should not be legal because they are extremely dangerous, and then you think of like YouTube's policy to say not monetize those channels because YouTube's sort of worldview aligns with yours. Like somebody who is for that would be like, thank you, YouTube, for doing that. But I believe the correct approach, my opinion, the correct approach in this day and age is just, is it legal or not? So last time I checked, owning firearms in the United States is legal. And so I don't know why a corporation would find it needed to punish those types of channels, especially when you have a world where now you have a competitor in X that will not punish those channels because they're abiding to just the law. They're saying this is the law, like it or not, that's the law. And I'm really sorry about your feelings, but that's just the law. That's how it works. And I think having that force now with X, which is this is very disrupting. It's disrupting by nature, right? And it's very much aligned with what, if you're familiar with Musk companies, what Tesla and SpaceX have done to their relative industries. SpaceX disrupted rocketry with reusable rockets. Tesla disrupted auto with electric and self-driving cars, right? And now X is disrupting these other things by just saying the law is the law. We're not going to punish anybody from a monetary perspective unless you are spreading falsehoods, which is what the community note system is supposed to do. It's supposed to, like, on a post by post basis, if the masses agree that this is done in deceit, then there's a mechanism that says, hey, we're not going to reward you for spreading deceit. But if all you're doing is just posting about, hey, I like my AR, like my AR is sick, check out what I can do. Okay, why should we punish that person for that, right? It's legal. You can own an AR and do it. So I think that's very interesting. And X is like that counterforce. It's a counterforce to other media companies that says, if you're not abiding to the rule, to the law, and you're not doing it the way we're doing it, which is maximally allowing people to figure out what they want to talk about as long as it's within the bounds of the law. If you don't do that, you're going to be at a natural disadvantage because we're going to hoard everybody. I think most people are comfortable with that. I think most people are comfortable, is my opinion. I think most people are comfortable with the notion of allowing other people to do whatever they want as long as it's legal. And if YouTube monetizes firearm channels, it's fine. Like, I don't see that's why that's a bad thing. And so if YouTube doesn't do that, they're at a disadvantage by default. There is a comment you want me to bring up. Did you want to hit something before I do that? Oh, you're muted. Come on, bro.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that up. No, I'm definitely not.
So regardless of your politics, it's never good to assume you're right about everything. This is from Peter. Thank you for your comment, my friend. What's the thought here?
Yeah, I think this is extremely important for society as a whole to operate under this. Not everyone is always going to agree with this. But the truth of the matter is that we all have very limited perspectives. And honestly, every person pretty much believes that they are right from their perspective. That almost no one really believes that they are the bad guy, or that the thing that they believe strongly is not justified in some way. And, not to go down a whole relative rabbit hole, the way that all of those errors get corrected is when people who can see those errors have the ability to point them out. And then there needs to be some sort of consensus mechanism for people to say, you know what, actually, that is not true. And this thing over here is more correct than that thing over there. And I think one of the concepts that I would highly recommend people look into is, go read What's Our Problem by Tim Urban of Wait But Why. It's a great book. It talks about a lot of these topics. And what Peter's talking about here is basically the concept of getting to the higher rung levels of thinking where we hold on to ideas loosely and we let ideas battle each other ferociously and see which ideas win. And we, as the people, we don't necessarily attach our identity to the ideas that we're experimenting with. And so that's what he calls high rung thinking or high rung culture. And then low rung culture is where people really, really get attached to the ideas that they have so closely that if the idea is attacked, they themselves feel attacked and they go into this fight or, fight, flight, freeze response. And so if you have the ability to say, you know what, this is an idea, this is not me, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, it should be able to be questioned, challenged. If it's true, then it should hold up under scrutiny. And I think that's one of the things that it's really, really important in science. And even science has kind of gotten almost not disrupted, but corrupted recently. And it's struggling to actually say things that, there are scientific things that we know to actually be true that scientists can't say because they're not popular, which means that science itself is not functioning optimally. And yeah, that's one example that we can see in kind of an objective realm, that we need those things, because if we start operating like, the laws of gravity don't exist, well, that's not going to be good for anyone. And obviously we're not to that level yet, but that's the direction that we're heading, and we need to kind of correct that.
Yeah, I think along the same lines as the previous comment from Peter, this is from Patrick on X. Attaching your identity to your ideas, that is the heart of the matter. I think the thing that this reminds me of is I've heard Joe Rogan say this as well. Is like, you are not your ideas. Like, you are not your ideas, and that is such a helpful way of thinking about discourse and sort of being comfortable with being challenged. Is that, and this is something that I'm forcing myself to step outside of the, like, I'm trying to practice this myself, right? I'm trying to actually try this and not just say it. And this is like, this live stream is an example of me stepping outside of that comfort zone on my YouTube and trying to, like, hey, like, let's put this to the test here. Is that getting stuff out there while being comfortable with being challenged is so important to ensuring that we're not going the wrong direction, because we are imperfect by design. Like, we do not know what we're talking about most of the time. Like, I'm fully, I think it's important for all of us to say we are going to be wrong a lot, and to welcome opposition from the opposing side is super important, because at the very least, like in a worst case scenario, you change your mind to something that's more reasonable. And in the best case scenario, you test your thesis so much that you know that it's bulletproof, and you can sleep comfortably at night knowing that this thing that's been bugging you in your head, you're finally laid to rest, because you've had some honest, good people challenging you on what you're thinking about. And I think that's very important for a person. I think that's really important for a person, and it leads to that sort of like culture almost of embracing freedom of speech for what it really is, which is creating a battlefield for ideas. Back in the day, they did it for a different reason to try to ensure that, freaking governments don't, take over people. But it kind of like, if you let it go long enough, it kind of devolves to that. I think if you let it go unchecked for, say, a couple of generations, before you know it, you're back to square one, and we're lords of peasants all over again, because we're not allowed to say or do things that others can. So interesting. Did you have any? I have a comment highlighted that I want to bring up, which is about X, but did you want to go on that train?
Yeah,
more?
Let's go for it.
Yeah, so here's from David Karoma.f. Thank you for your comment, my friend. I love that StreamYard can now do YouTube and X comments, dude. It's so sick. It's like we're bringing them both together. I like community notes, but to offload all quality control to users is insane. I think this is an interesting topic, because it kind of like, for me, it kind of goes down that rabbit hole of, I would rather the masses have the power versus a small group of people that are working in the shadows. Right. So it's like, here, in my opinion, democratizing the ability of having people from opposite sides of, say, the political spectrum or different worldviews to come together in agreement, even though it's imperfect and you have to offload your trust on humanity, in my opinion, that's much better than having a small team of people that, I don't know how they're being influenced. Those people are probably in the same chair for years on end, for those people to become the quote unquote truth police. That scares me, because I know for a fact that humans are corruptible, are imperfect, will make mistakes. And those small group of people could be influenced in a way that all of a sudden the truth doesn't become the truth. It becomes something else. It becomes propaganda. It becomes what they want you to believe, right? What do you think about this comment from David?
I understand the concern there, and it is something that is very natural. I think that having one platform where maybe that is the extent of the quality control is an experiment that needs to exist. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they do have to change this over the long term. Um, but this is definitely an A/B test for society that absolutely needs to happen, and it needs to be placed in tension with other platforms that are gonna be much more top-down command and control style quality control. And so, you know, we'll just have to kinda see how it runs. But that's my thoughts on this.
Yeah. And there's a follow up comment from David. The mob can be corruptible too, though. Thank you for acknowledging, though. Of course, David, this is what it's all about.
Yep.
I agree with you, but I think the chances of the masses being corrupted, I think, is less than a small number of people being corrupted with let's say high morals, because I think as long as okay, so maybe the point Dave is making here is maybe the system itself can be corrupted. You know, maybe the system of community notes can be corrupted in a way. What do you
Well,
think?
so one of the ways that I think about this is actually the exact reason why we have a constitutional republic instead of a democracy. And in that way that yes, the majority can easily and often is wrong in important ways. Um, and so that is something that has to be navigated, and that's why we have things like the electoral college and why we have, the different branches of government that are set up in tension to one another, is to try and prevent the ways that these things typically go off the rails. Now, community notes already has an architecture that takes that kind of stuff into account, that the only things that rise to the level of being accepted as community notes and being shown to general users and not just the participants of the community notes program is that those notes have to be agreed upon by people who typically disagree on other things. And so you can kind of use the overall landscape and map of disagreements and find places of commonality, to see, okay, this thing is likely to be true because these people who don't normally cooperate with one another agree that this is true.
Right.
And so that is an inbuilt mechanism to correct for this, but no system is perfect. And that is one of the things that community notes will have to continually contend with, that as the landscape continues to evolve, the actual algorithm for community notes will also need to co-evolve with that landscape so that it can not um, basically fail in important ways, especially around important topics, as world events really uh, are shaped in a large way by what happens here.
Yeah. And here's a question from Mimi along the same topic. Who says they have to work in the shadows in respects to say an alternative for community notes? Yeah, I think the sort of point that Hans just brought up is kind of like why by default community notes in my head is better. It's because you're not in the shadows by default. It's a open source algorithm that we know how it works. It pits two people with opposing views to come together for a agreement on if something is accurate or not. And to me, that's always going to be a lot more transparent than a small number of folks that are essentially hired by a corporation that are then trusted to do that function. And then as the years evolve, we don't know who those people, if those people still hold the same morals, if they hold the same sort of thought processes, if maybe they've influenced each other to converge into like the same group think, right? Whereas if you leave it wide open and you allow just humanity to drive that instead of a small number of folks, I think that by default, like that will shift with humanity. Like what those disagreements and agreements will shift with humanity. Whereas if it's a small number of people, by default, those people, I think, over time will congregate, and it has a higher chance of becoming corrupted than just allowing humanity to drive community notes, if that makes any sense. Did I make any sense there, Hans? I hope so.
Yeah, I think that maybe the point that Mimi was proposing was that you could have some sort of centralized system or quality control that doesn't operate in the shadows. And so she's kind of proposing something, which I agree with what you said. This is just, I think, a different direction for one possibility. And it is a good question that, as long as we can, the question that I have is, how do you know if it is or is not transparent? like there can be a transparent base to that quality control system, but that doesn't mean that you actually have see-through into all of the important decisions. And I think that the system that we've had is a great example of that. That, we basically all thought that these decisions that were being made about who gets to speak and what they get to say here over the past 5 years were the decisions of the platforms themselves. And then come to find out later, they weren't, for the most part, the decisions of the platforms themselves. That because those platforms had gained such power, that forces that were very resourced and had specific agendas were able to co-opt those systems. And that's the problem, I think, that is really dangerous about anything that is overly centralized, is that if you have something that is overly centralized and has a great deal of influence, that it essentially becomes a honeypot that attracts those people with the most resources and the strongest agenda, the most skin in the game, who want to utilize that for their own ends.
And the thought there is that humans, it's hard to find an example in history that humans won't at some point become a force that want to corrupt something for their own personal gain, especially when they have power and influence. You talked about this quite deeply just a moment ago too. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to think about. What other things do you wanna hit here? What's going through your mind?
I guess I could. One of the things that I'm thinking about on this topic is we've basically had this experiment and we played it out a number of times, and it is the experiment of monarchy versus democracy. That monarchy is that thing, and monarchy works great if you have a great monarch, if you have a great king, if you have a great queen. Man, there is very little that operates as well as that system when everything is perfectly aligned, because you have the benefits. And this is, Elon is essentially a modern manifestation of a highly functional monarchy. That Elon is in near complete control of his various companies, that he has veto power and decision power to make any major decision in any one of those companies that he needs to. And that doesn't mean that he is involved in all of the everyday minutia of every single company. It seems like that is becoming less and less the case over time, although it was very much the case early on in each one of those endeavors. But the problem is that, monarchies don't last, and that kings and queens and CEOs and entrepreneurs, they all get old and they die. And then somebody else takes the reins who has a different worldview. They have different perspectives. They have different skill sets. And oftentimes it is the process of building that kingdom that makes someone an incredible king or queen. And if you are inheriting a kingdom rather than building a kingdom, then you do not have the same perspective that a builder would have about how to make tweaks and how to make decisions. And so that's why over time, monarchies definitely fail. And so that's why democracy has been a system that people have experimented with throughout the centuries and millennia, is for this exact reason. And it does seem to have a longer lifespan than monarchies do, but it also is subject to the same overall forces, just on longer timescales. And so I think that's something to. I know Elon says think from first principles, not from analogies. And a lot of times thinking about the way that history rhymes is thinking by analogy. But if you can use those analogies to get at the fundamental or first principles of the matter, you can transfer a lot of time some of the principles from, different time periods or different historical situations to the times that we live in. So that's one of the ways that I think about that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think what I struggle with is like what sort of what you just described, where democracy tends to be a much better way of handling things than having a monarchy over time. I think and sort of how do we apply this to to, in this use case, like X, and just democratizing like sort of people's ability to speak up and be comfortable doing that. There's still that sort of barrier that we have to go through, which is like, okay, but how do you put that in practice, right? Like, how do you actually make that a thing? All of us can sit down and be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But then when push comes to shove, I think it's there's a lot of friction to actually, have everybody be on board with that, right? And I want to highlight, just as you were going on that train of thought, it sort of piqued, something came to mind that I wanted to highlight. There was a post from Mark Cuban on X. Mark and Elon were going at it a couple of days ago. And he was, I forget the exact topic they were talking about, but there was vigorous debate. I believe it was about DEI. Yeah, it was about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, Mark was getting beat up, that guy. And he stood strong, he stood strong, and he stood for what he believed in, which is great. But then this post I thought was very interesting, because I think this encapsulates how this can be successful long term. This thought process about, okay, making X into a place where people are comfortable speaking up with the trust that others will actually that others will look out for you, even when you're quote unquote saying something that others will not agree with. I have to say, this is from Mark Cuban. I have to say that over the last 24 hours, I found X to be warm and welcoming. The diversity of responses in both tone and content has been heartwarming. This is very important, because this is why something like this is so valuable. I did have to block one account with a large number of followers. I wonder if that was Elon. But beyond that, I appreciate all the engagement. And I think, like, the idea here should be, what can X do as a platform so that everybody feels that way? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that even possible? Is that, like, does it require other people to do that, like, to say that? Does it require other people to speak up and say, yeah, there might be a couple corners of the internet or of X that are very uncomfortable and unwelcoming, and it feels like, why would I even be here? This feels insane. Versus, like, people should, the silent majority should be like, yeah, this place is kind of cool. I get to see stuff that challenges me, and I feel comfortable speaking up and talking about how I view the world and view ideas. Like, how do you think that's an unsolvable, like, is that even something that we can solve for?
Yeah, no, I think that I guess it depends on what you mean by everybody. And so not every person who is on X is going to feel like they appreciate the fact that everyone gets to have their own viewpoint and they get to voice it. And I think that, the people that are not happy with that really are going to be on, either they're the people that are really identifying with their ideas and they can't handle having ideas challenged, or they're going to be people who love to control their environment so much that they do not appreciate. And it's really, a very similar type of person. Um, they don't appreciate the openness that it takes to have an idea challenged, or to let someone say something that is really, um, really rude. I think that's one of, a completely separate dimension that it is. I love to have ideas challenged when people are challenging the ideas in good faith and they are not attacking the individuals that are involved. And so I typically disengage with people. I love to engage with people who will attack ideas and not people. And I will disengage even if someone is really great at attacking ideas, but in the process they go after the people involved. I typically will not participate in those conversations because they make me personally very uncomfortable. But I think that anyone who will hold ideas kind of with an open hand and understands the fact that, has the humility to appreciate the fact that no one has a monopoly on truth, or at least no person. And right now, no company, no corporation, no nation, no AI system, nothing that we have made to this point has been able to achieve that. And that is kind of the holy grail. So anyone who I think embraces that can embrace the fact that people get to speak their mind on X and can enjoy, because there are definitely going to be lots of places on X where you can enjoy that experience in a way, and you can, curate it for yourself to remove types of behavior or the types of engagement that you don't necessarily want to. That, while the overall system itself is free, that each user has a lot of agency and ability to moderate and really curate their own experience, their own feed, what it is that they see, what it is that they don't see. And so I think that, yeah, that's something that really is, I think it's the best system that is possible currently. And it is the one that maximizes the number of people that can enjoy that and have a positive experience doing it.
And I also think that there is like the silent majority, I think fits the bill of reasonable, truly understands nuance, will not be emotional at first. They will like try to like take it for what it is. They're willing to like, really allow the idea to sort of go to war in their head a little bit, but they're not insane like I am, and they don't actually like write a post. They actually they're actually normal people who are good people, and they're like, I have better things to do, right? And I think that's where like I have to like ensure that's the bubble that I try to fight constantly, is like I'm trying to ensure that I'm not in a bubble when I'm thinking about it this way, because I do believe what you just said applies to like people that are rational and are good when they're thinking, and they're well-meaning when they're trying to fight with ideas. That's actually the majority. That's the huge majority. It's just they're not going to do it on X. They're not going to do it on Facebook. They're not going to do it on wherever else. They might do it at the family table, or they might do it with their friends and family. And this is kind of like, this is not real life. It's like just a place where you go and be entertained and maybe get news from time to time. And I think over time, though, what's interesting is I think there needs to be some sort of tool, though, that's important to ensure that the systems that are in place, like legacy media and corporations and things like that, that there's an important counterbalance to be able to call out things that are going too far, because of the amount of power those institutions hold. If there's not some sort of force that can fight that, it becomes problematic. And that's why I gravitate to things like X and things of that nature, because I can see the value of it. Like I really enjoy seeing things that disrupt in a way that's better for humanity, in my opinion, right? And I think that's why something like that should exist. But at the same time, if the reason why that exists is to ensure that people are on there speaking up and speaking their mind, I think all of us should ensure that we're carrying ourselves in the same way we would with somebody in real life, right? Where we're like in front of somebody and we're communicating with them. We're polite, we're nice, we're kind, and I need to listen to my own advice, because sometimes I'll be on there freaking trolling people, because I'm like, they'll be saying something, I'll be like, haha, whatever, like I just troll. And maybe I should stop doing that, because I'm not a good role model for that. But no, it's very interesting stuff you just said there, and it's just fascinating seeing this thing actually happening in real time, because it does seem like a positive trend, at least from my perspective. It seems like something that is disrupting an entire industry that, in my opinion, has needed disrupting for a long time. And it's interesting that it's the same guy that is disrupting auto and is disrupting space. And I think that's, and I also sometimes think about how big of an effect does that have when we know that singular person has a lot of attention on him already. And then as he's navigating into this world of legacy media and stuff, and freedom of speech and whatnot, I wonder how many doors are being opened to that thing that wouldn't have been opened before if it wasn't for that person doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like if it was some random person buying Twitter, I wonder if it would have the same exact effect as someone like Elon buying Twitter. So
yeah, I agree. I think so one of the themes that we've been touching on here that I wanted to pull out is the theme of tension. That usually, a lot of people will think about something that's true, and they'll think about it almost like there is one thing that is true, and it's kind of like the tip of a mountaintop that, you're kind of ascending toward. But it seems to me more like the nature of truth is there's multiple things that are true, and that what is the most true is the thing that finds balance, or not necessarily balance, but tension, that you take two true things and you put them in opposition to one another, and they're both true. And then that is actually the most pragmatic thing that you can do, and the most useful thing that you can do. And so this is an idea that I think that Jocko Willink puts forward really, really well in a book called The Dichotomy of Leadership. And he talks about a number of different dichotomies that leaders have to balance, giving being too involved in the decisions of their subordinates versus not being involved enough. That you need to not completely control something that someone does, but you also can't let them operate in a way that's completely opposite to the goal of the overall team. And so there's that tension that you have to navigate. And so that's something that is true on a number of different levels for our own lives, but it's also true in society. And that's, what X, I think, is doing, is it is setting itself up as one of those points of truth that is putting tension on things back towards a more sane, more center, more functional viewpoint. And it does take someone like Elon, who is w- completely comfortable with being controversial, because he's setting up a new point of tension. And so he is pulling a lot of things towards his viewpoint now. And so he has to be comfortable with not caring the fact that this is going to upset a lot of people, but then also have the ability to be able to stand up under all of the pushback that he's going to get, whether that comes from individuals or governments or corporations. And so he needed to have the power and influence that comes with running some of the most disruptive and culturally effective companies in the world in order to do that.
Absolutely. Did you want to hit another topic before we do some Q&A? Yeah? Okay. So if you have a question or a comment, type it in the comment section below. If you're on YouTube, on the live stream, if you're on X, somewhere below this video, I think that's where it's at. I'll bring up this comment here, which is quite interesting, from Lab Experiment on X. It makes more sense to me that users should decide what advertising show up in their feed. I never need to see an ad for Disney, as I don't have kids and have no interest in going there. Your thoughts on this idea, Zaddy and Hans? Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it should be up to the individual to figure out what ads they want to see, and I believe this is available in most, if not all, social media platforms. I think you can click and be like, I don't want to see ads like this, and you can do that. What are your thoughts there, Hans?
Yeah, I think it is typically a system that typically operates. Did I say typically enough times? This is a
Say it one more
system that
time.
normally operates typically
Nice.
by veto. That, if you see something and you don't like it, you can click on it and say, hey, I don't want to see an ad like this, or I don't want to see ads from whatever this company is. I think that that's probably like, it's the same idea. Do you have a radio button checked or unchecked by default when someone fills out a form? And right now, all ads are definitely going to be unchecked by default to override them. Um, and users should have the ability to say, hey, I don't want to see anything more like this. But also, I think the overall idea that users should really be much more in control of their ad experience is a very positive idea. This is something that I've thought about for a long time. I think that if there was a platform that allowed advertisers to basically buy attention from individuals directly, instead of controlling, like, AdSense is obviously the gorilla, the King Kong of advertising right now, and they are the ones that are making a lot of the decisions. They're kind of like a third party intermediary between advertisers and individuals. And then I think that in the future, platforms will have an opportunity to disrupt that model if they allow those advertisers to have a much more direct relationship, where you could allow someone to pay you basically to watch their ads, and then create a targeting system that's based around that idea. And I think that, it's possible we'll see something that's much more structured in that way, in the artificial intelligence based future, depending on what overall user interfaces and overall technologies that we see becoming dominant.
Yeah. Here's a comment from the Honest Broker. Honest Broker is somebody who often goes against the grain in the comment section, and I appreciate that. FYI, thank you. And he gets a lot of flack, but we'll give him a shout out anyway. Thank you, Honest. Musk is an R&D and manufacturing business genius. However, he's incredibly stupid in the social media business. I think that what's interesting here, I'll give you sort of my opinion, and then Hans, I'd love to hear yours too. I think one could have said the same exact thing as it applied to Musk making the EV back in 2012 and Musk making reusable rockets back in 2007, 2008. I think what might be being perceived as stupid is that he's not doing what traditional media companies do today, which is make the advertiser the customer. Like media companies, their goal here is to make the advertiser companies the customer, because that's actually what pays the bills, and then they serve it to the the user, which is us, right? And so in this sense, where maybe this is what you're referring to, Honest, is he's incredibly stupid in the social media business. What you may mean is like, well, he's doing all these things that are breaking that revenue source. Like he's literally pissing off advertisers left and right, which are the lifeblood of the company. I believe he's thinking about it a different way. I believe the way he's thinking about it is he's looking 10 years into the future and he's saying, okay, this platform long term, this quote unquote everything app is not going to be reliant on advertisers for revenue. It's going to be reliant on users, the customer, the user for revenue through financial services, a marketplace, subscriptions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And over the long term, we want advertising to be a much less percentage of the total revenue stream than it is today. And so when he's thinking about that, based on how he's acting today, because I've seen this happen many times, he's not going to say, well, I'm going to just act in the way I should be acting now to not piss these people off. I'm just going to build towards this thing and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I think that lines up directly with that process. So it might look stupid in the sense of it's not what everyone else is doing today, which is quote unquote harming the business. But I think in reality is the thought process is there's a fundamental disruption to what a media company is right now. And that's what he's trying to build with X. I could be wrong, but that's how I perceive it. What do you think, Hans?
Yeah, I mean, on the dimension of, I really don't believe that he's trying to build the most successful social media company. And I think if you evaluated it on that metric, I think that you could say that, in a lot of ways that it's not a very smart business plan. I think what he's trying to do is create an overall self-sustaining business that is a positive force for democracy. And that's a completely different thing than creating the most successful social media business. And, Elon thinks a lot about culture and society. And, without society, without humanity, this is something that he's talked about a lot, then basically everything goes away. And right now we live in a very, very complex society that really surpasses anything that has ever existed on Earth before. And we don't know if we go through one of those contraction phases like societies have gone through all throughout history, and we lose the structures that kind of uphold the global world order today. We don't know how far we can fall. And so this is something that he thinks about a lot. He's very concerned about. And one of the reasons that he's doing all of this is to try and address the cultural elements that sustain versus degrade a society over time. And then as long as he can figure out a business model, and this is really the way that he has operated in all his businesses. He wanted to solve our transition to sustainable energy. That was the challenge that he was pursuing. And Tesla was him backing into, not starting with a business model and saying, okay, what are the problems that I can now go out and solve with this business model that I have that I think is going to work very well? He's like, what's one of the biggest problems in the world that I can solve? And how do I figure out how to build a business model in the air around that problem as I solve it. The same thing was true for SpaceX. The same thing was true, honestly, for X.com early on before it became PayPal. And this is just the way that he operates. And so it's not going to look like, trying to build a traditional company and it doesn't operate under the traditional company playbook. And so, yes, if you evaluate it like it is one of those things, it's going to look really dumb for a really long time, just like Tesla looked really dumb for a really long time. SpaceX looked really dumb for a really long time. But then if he is overall successful in achieving the goal of creating a more healthy functioning society for democracy, then and the business model is able to sustain itself, that's such a big problem that I think it will be really hard for him to solve that problem without making a lot of money, over the course of decades, maybe not short term, but definitely over the long term.
Yeah. And this is where this follow-up comment from Honest Broker comes in. Yes, Farzad, you're correct that he wants to shift the business model, but his new business model ideas are unproven, and it's unclear whether he's willing to fund those losses required to change. Yeah, so I think Hans sort of addressed a lot of that, and it's unproven, 100% correct, unclear, 100% correct. But if we look at the past successes he's had, let's not, past successes don't mean that it's going to continue. I get it. But I think there's something to gather there, that if the fundamental change is better for society, then you can figure out how to make it work over time. And you just know that people will flock to that new alternative and the monetization will follow. Like, people are just, where there's success, if you're somebody who's good enough about cost control and being innovative, that you'll have profits, right? And I think that's where maybe we're differing on opinion, is that you're coming from the standpoint of, well, it's not going to work, but I think there's already clues in here that says it is going to work. And sort of the ones that I think about is, every time there's been an advertiser boycott, they've come back. And every time it becomes more and more normal to have a CEO say controversial stuff. And I don't see how that's a bad thing. If anything, that's a good thing, because again, we're shifting that Overton window of what can be talked about. And then as advertisers understand that, they'll flock to the place where that it has been artificially suppressed, where it's no longer artificially suppressed, because now there's a ton of attention on this thing that everyone's like, wow, I've never seen this happen before. And then before you know it, the ad people are like, whoa, this is crazy. I didn't know I could advertise on this. I think, and then of course, financial services, subscriptions, marketplace, so on and so forth, that becomes more and more plentiful. That was a great question, great comment. I'm glad we did that. That one. Here's a question, not a question from Perjohan. Thank you, Perjohan from YouTube, for your support. Elon is controversial because he thinks it is needed, not because he likes to be controversial. And I think that sort of falls in line with some of the things we were talking about. Did you want to add anything there? Okay.
Just 100% agreement.
From Matt, oh my God, Senko? Sorry, Matt. Supporter on YouTube, thank you so much. When are we going to see micropayments on X, paying for articles instead of having to subscribe to the media source, tipping for high quality content? I'm sure that's coming down the pike. I know it's something that Elon mentioned as a feature for X at some point, but I'm sure that's going to come. Did you want to add anything to that, Hans?
Yeah, there's a system architecture that's in the work. We basically need FSD v12 end-to-end rework for X, and it's going to take us a while to get there. But when we do, that will definitely be one of the things that is included.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Let's see if I can come up a question or two more. Is there one you're seeing there, Hans, that we should bring up? I see a couple comments, very few comments, or not very few, but I'm seeing quite a few comments here. But it's kind of,
we forgot to ask people to put question at the beginning of their question in all caps to help us.
It's Hans's fault.
It is my fault.
I'm kidding. Okay,
I messed up. I messed up bad. I have to tell you that story if I haven't yet. We'll do that off air though.
Okay.
It's not appropriate.
Okay. Fair enough. Maybe we'll do this one. From Jim, Musk definitely doesn't have much of a filter. It's refreshing to me and makes many people mad. I think it is, to me, it's cool to see somebody of his sort of power, influence, and stature, willing to speak his mind, even though I may not agree with it. It's different. It's cool. It's disruptive, and I like different and cool and disruptive. And some people will be like, "You're such a crazy person." Like, maybe, yeah. There's our question.
Nice. Yes. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. Maybe we'll leave it off there for the first one, Hans. What do you think?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to hit before we? Yeah.
No, I think this might actually be a good place to kind of wrap it up and take it home.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments how you like this discussion. Definitely something I'm very much looking forward to do on a weekly basis here with Hans. It'll be a varied discussion for all of us to kind of walk through. The goal here is to tackle things that are maybe not spoken about too much in depth, and to try and use this platform for Hans and I selfishly to get our brains empty before we go into the weekend. Before we leave, I love Pert. That's two questions that haven't been questions, but I really appreciate it, Per Johan. I would like to thank you, Per Johan, for supporting us. Thank you, brother. You're awesome. I want to show you guys a picture before we leave, if that's okay. I know some of you folks have been asking about a producer wife / producer soon to be mom, my lovely wife Cindy. Here's a picture from we went and saw the baby doctor a couple of days ago, and here's our little baby boy chilling in the womb, and apparently he looks like me already. My wife's saying he looks like me already, so we'll see. But yeah, that's our baby boy, May 25th. Incredibly proud. I just wanted to show it because I'm like, I'm over the moon. I don't even know. Like, it's changed me so much already as a person. It's like, I feel so fortunate and lucky. So love you guys very much. I know you're constantly asking about an update, so there's your update. Thank you very much. All right. Any parting words, Hans, from your end?
Congratulations. Kids are awesome. It's going to be a great experience. Yeah, I can't wait for your life to get wrecked. It's going to be sweet.
Yeah. Sleep who? Dude, we should do like a comparison next year. I want to see how big the bags under my eyes are going to be. Yeah, we'll do it before and after. All right, everybody. Love you guys very much. Have a fantastic weekend. Love you all very much. If we agree or disagree, I just love that that we're creating a place where more of this kind of discussion can happen. And I think this is all positive. And I thank you very much, Hans, for being somebody that I can have these discussions with. You're awesome. And make sure you go follow Hans at Hans C. Nelson on YouTube and on X as well. Fantastic channel, super in-depth discussions about technology and artificial intelligence and society. And maybe you'll do one soon about religion, maybe?
Yep, it'll come out. So we'll tease. There was a discussion with Zuby this week, and I had some technical difficulties getting it off the ground, which means that my editing challenge is going to be much harder because I got to go back and fix a bunch of stuff. But yeah, hopefully here in the next couple days, definitely early next week, I will have that out and published on YouTube. If people are on X, it's a space, and y'all can just go look that up and find it and listen to it. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, looking forward to sharing that with the YouTube crowd.
Heck yeah. And at some point, I would maybe want you and I should do a religion one at some point, because I find it very interesting. Interesting. Yeah, very, very
It is interesting.
All right, everybody. Love you guys. Love you, Hans. We'll see you next week for our weekly discussion, and then I'll keep posting videos as I usually do.